Hello, today I'm going to be covering drum looper pedals, specifically the ones you find on Amazon. If you want to not watch the whole video, this one won. However, if you want to see before I looked at, here they are. We'll start with the Donner Circle Looper, the Lekato Looper, I forget their model number. 2805 blue, the KMise, which is the MI3653 is their model number, and last we have the Flamma FS21. Here they all are. Here are the boxes they come in. Accessories, as you can see, USB cable. Those are rubber feet that go on the bottom if you don't want to use Velcro. They give you 4. Same thing with the KMise, I'll call it. Gives you a USB and the rubber feet. Interesting to note, only Flamma is the only one that actually gives you a 9-volt power adapter to go with it. So, you know, the most expensive of the bunch also comes with a power adapter. I guess that's appropriate for what you're paying. Instruction wise, it's pretty easy. Donner's instruction booklet is thicker, bigger, more detailed. If you're into paper documentation to go with your product and you don't want to read a PDF, Donner's going to be the winner there. I don't know if I lost the Lekato pamphlet or they just said go get the PDF, but whatever. It's not like these documentations, with the exception of Donner, don't really give you that much. The KMise also has a fair amount, and the Lekato one is basically that. And that's, the Flamma one, that's what you get. And they want you to go download the PDF, basically. Now, most interesting part about the comparison, other than there's 2 distinct models, I made a little sheet here and I printed it out. You can see the winner in price was the KMise. KMise, when at the time of purchase, which was September 2023 pricing, was $69. And these are the prices I paid. The Donner $119 and the Flamma right up there at $128. Being the most expensive was the Flamma. Although you do get the power thing, so that adds a little more. And then the Lekato was at $89. The funny thing is, looking today, the KMise appears to be $89 today. But they constantly have these apply the coupon discount type things and all that, so they can go up or down 10 or 20 bucks depending on what day you go look at it at. But generally speaking, the KMise, this one here, is the cheapest. Another interesting thing to note is I figured out, and I'll show you how I figured out, the year these things were actually built or fabricated. And I got that from looking at the dates on the circuit boards, and I'll show you that. You can see it gives you the exact day of when the production run happened. So 2 of them, specifically the Donner and the Flamma, the more expensive 2, were the earlier generations. They were made in 2018. And then April of this year, we had the newer, less expensive ones. The Lekato and the KMise were made in April of this year, April 3rd specifically, and they're also cheaper. One other interesting thing to note is you'll notice from a USB perspective, the more expensive 2, the Flamma, has micro USB as your port, as does the Donner, and the Lekato has USB-C. I don't know if the lighting's showing that. There's a USB-C for that, and the KMise also has USB-C. So from a USB perspective, that's the big difference between these pedals. And there's a reason why, I'm pretty sure, and that goes back to the build date, right, of when these things were made. The older ones obviously have the micro USB, the ones that were cranked out 4 or 5 months ago, in whatever production run they did when they made these. Whoever the real OEM is of these products, they had a run, I guess, in April of this year to make those. Interesting other thing I noticed was, the software. And we'll get to the software in a minute. I'll show it to you. When I originally bought these, it was interesting. The Flamma had Windows, and Mac, and the Lekato did not. Donner was the last one I bought, I'm not quite sure, and I think the KMise had both all at the beginning. So it was interesting. This one was Windows only, this one was Mac only. As of today, I just double checked, and I'm going to give you the URLs in the description of the video of where to download the software for all 4 of these products. It's a different site, obviously, for each one. They all now both support Mac and Windows, and they have the download file, zip file that you can download. It's a DMG file for Mac, and then it's a setup.exe for Windows. So now all 4 looper pedals, and there's even a 5th one out there that OEMs the same pedal and just throws their name and paint on the casing. They're all basically the same, with the exception of, do you have the 2018 version or do you have the 2023 version? So how I got the dates, and I'll flip all these over now, is if you look on these circuit boards that comprise these, you'll notice let me just start off with the earlier versions. The 2018 versions, they have a daughter card. On the daughter card, which is basically identical for both of these, you can see there's a manufacturer date. There it is right there. 2018 9/17. Pretty sure on this one it's somewhere around there. Maybe it's upside down. Yeah, there's the date code there, covered by the wire. So Flamma and Donner both are 5-year-old designs. And as a result, they had the micro USB. One thing to note, and I don't think this is going to be a deal breaker, but Donner and Flamma were both smart enough to make, if you push your power plug in too hard, it's socketed and you can replace it without having to solder. If you break this by shoving the power cord in too hard, or it gets banged up, where on the other models, it's the KMise and the Lekato, I don't know if you can see it with my lighting, it's soldered to the board. So basically you'd have to get your soldering gun out and you'd have to unsolder it. It's not impossible. I think it's probably only, I'm pretty sure it's only 2 leads, but you're going to have to be able to solder a little bit if you jam your power plug back into there. How often does that happen? Probably not very often, but it's just one thing to note. One other interesting thing to note about the newer 2023 pedals is they both have a micro SD card that is removable. You can see it slides out, and it's just a little micro SD card. Now, with that being said, I'll tell you 2 interesting things. It is FAT32 formatted. You can throw it into your laptop and read the files off it. I guess basically see your loops stored in a folder. But the interesting thing is you can't upgrade the size of the micro SD card, at least very easily. And by that, what I mean is there is a file in the root directory folder of the actual card itself, and it has some weird file name which doesn't use standard ASCII type characters. You can't copy the file. I tried Linux, Mac, and Windows. There is no way to copy the file off and copy it back. If that one file is not present, the device won't even boot up. It won't power up without that. So when the thing powers on, it checks to see if that file's on the SD card. If it doesn't see it, it won't start. I used Acronis and did a bit-by-bit copy. I did a backup restore, and then I did a clone and tried to clone it to a larger card. These cards are 8 gigabyte cards that come with them. I tried to put in a 128, same format. Again, I use cloning software. Even with the cloning software, it doesn't work. The cloning software errored out. I guess it doesn't know how to write that file, whatever they do to make that file that way. There's got to be a way around it. I just haven't put enough time into it to figure out how to copy that file off the SD card so I can use a bigger SD card. Which gets me to the next interesting point about these. They all have the same specs. They let you save 40 loops to these, right? They all have, all this is the same. 40 loops. Each loop can be 4 minutes. So that's 4 times 40 is 160 minutes of recording time on all these. On the drum side, the drum samples are the same. I could not tell any difference. They're all categorized the same. You get 100 drum loops that you can play with. I'll play a couple of them in a minute. And you also get 10 metronomes, different types of metronomes. And they classify the drum loops into 11 styles quickly: pop, rock, metal, disco, funk, blues, hip-hop, jazz, Latin, fusion. And then the last 10 are different types of clicking metronomes and all that. So all that's the same across all 4 of these pedals. You got to ask yourself, do you want the 5-year-old design or do you want the newer design? Do you want to have a micro USB or a USB-C? Most people are probably going to go with the USB-C, but I'm just putting that out there. Sample rate is the same across the board. They're all 44 kilohertz, 24-bit. Nothing is different between these. The only thing I really noticed between the software, which is pretty much identical in all these, is when you go to the drum loop section and you want to change the volume on the drum loop, right? The 2018 version, the 2018 version has 20 steps to do your volume, where the newer version only has 10 steps, and I'll demonstrate this. So I go to volume. There's 20 volume steps, and I'm on the KMise right now. So I can go from 1 to 20 on my volume, right? If I do the same thing, but I'm just doing it, sorry for the video jumble. I do the same exact thing on the Flamma as soon as it boots up. I just passed it. Volume. I go to 10, so it's 1 to 10 on my drum volume on the older Flamma and Donner, and the newer KMise and Lekatos have 20 steps. Other than that, I haven't really seen any big difference in the software. It all looks basically the same. Power thing, 9 volt, of course, runs off a standard pedal power supply. Nothing strange, unique there. They claim 300 milliamps. I think I have it in 100 milliamp, but you know, as long as you're somewhere between 1 and 300, you're probably fine on these. And before I get to the sound, I just want to show you the software. Now, the software is the same on Mac and Windows. So I'm just going to show you the one on Mac, but I've done it on both Mac and Windows, right? When you fire up the software, all it allows you to do is, I got to plug one in. All the software is going to allow you to do is either copy the loops you recorded off, or it's going to allow you to take a wave or an MP3 file. So there's the USB connection. Going over to the Mac, the app itself will tell you USB connected. You'll see that over there. And remember, you got a 4-minute limit here, and you can either import or you can export. I tested it with a wave and an MP3. And when you go to import it, it's pretty straightforward. Let me pick a new one here. I go to import, and then I can pick a file, and then I say open, and then it will go ahead, and you can see down there it'll do the import thing. Interesting thing, you can import a track of any length, but it's going to truncate it at the 4-minute mark, and it will tell you that it truncates it at 4 minutes. When you're hooked up with USB, the looper is going to say USB connect. I'm showing you on the KMise, but I've done this with all 4, and they're all the same. They all behave the same manner. It's just one of them I'm going to be using a micro USB. The other one I'm using USB-C. So that's basically how you add the different loops. Or if you've recorded a really good guitar loop that you want to save for later, you can dump it off to MP3 file or WAV or whatever you want to export it as over there. One thing I haven't tried, and I probably will try, is you can take the micro SD card out when the thing's powered off, put it into a PC, and you could see the files there. I know importing, there's a 4-minute limit truncation, but I haven't tried taking an 8-minute MP3 and then actually copying it up on the laptop to the card, then putting the card back in. I'm under the assumption that that would probably work, because I think it's the software import function that limits to 4 minutes, not actually, the physical hardware itself. The only other problem with that is you do have a limit of 8 gigs worth of space on the card. And, you know, the sample rate is 44.1 kilohertz at 24 bits. So if you put on, you could theoretically put a really long track on there, but you're going to have less room for your other tracks. Just something to note. And I guess the last part, let's get to it. You probably want to hear what these sound like. I have several different drum machines. I used to own a Beat Buddy that I sold, and the Beat Buddy was great. And I could say this is easily on a par, on a quality with the Beat Buddy. So, you know, it's these things are priced much less. Beat Buddies start at $350 new. The used market, they're $250 to $350 depending on what condition they're in. And you know, you basically get a little bit more, and I'll get into that a second, with a Beat Buddy than over these. But then again, the Beat Buddy doesn't have a looper function, so you can't record a track to loop. I'm actually going to break off the connection because it's going to take too long. It's take another couple minutes for it to upload. And I'll show you here the memory slot. It's on 40. On there's one. Now this isn't a drum machine. This is just me playing a looper track, and the looper track I have has vocals, drum already in it. It doesn't have guitar. It's made so I could play along, and I'll let you hear that. Alright, so you can see there's vocal and there's drum in there. It could be a regular MP3 song that you want to play along with, as long as it's under 4 minutes. And that's just doing the looper side of things. Now, if I want to switch over to the drum side of things, I'm going to go to one of the rock tracks I like, and I'll let you hear what that sounds like. And like everything else, I can control the BPM. And then volume. So that basically, that's the drum track. Now I've got this going to a guitar amp that I haven't really EQ'd that well. But I can say I've plugged it into a PA system and it sounded a lot better. Last thing I wanted to cover is, and maybe I should have gone over this first. They all have the same buttons and inputs and outputs. You've got a left and right input. Usually you plug your guitar, I guess, into the left one there. The external control we're going to go over in a second. And then you've got a left and right output, normally using the left output to go straight to your amp. If you want to, can you have some extra buttons, you can take a foot switch. Now, interesting thing on Amazon is they say it's got an external foot switch, but they don't give you any that are known and tested to work, which is kind of strange. You can go to Lekato, Flamma, Donner's website, and they've got some accessories there to buy one. I just happen to have a Digitech FS3X foot switch, which is a 3-button. Most importantly to note is when you hook this up, you can't use a regular guitar cable. You got to use a TRS cable. How it's got the 2 rings there, as opposed to your guitar cable is going to have just the 1 ring. You need to do TRS with the 2 rings, which everyone that knows about stuff, pedals and all that, probably already knows this. It just goes right into the control. Let me do it on the one that's plugged in, actually. And sorry for the bad camera work. And now when I press the buttons over here, you can see I can switch different things. I can switch whether I'm going through metronome and all that on this side, and start and stop is still done with these 2 buttons and the overdub. But I can, and then I can switch between the 3rd button on the outside here. This one switches between, am I going to do the looper or am I going to do the drum machine? So that sends me back and forth. And then if I want to go up and down in my different loops, my up and down button, up and down here, I know it's labeled differently. My mode and my up and down, this is my up and this is my down on there. So the external control works. I've tested this with all 3 or 4 pedals, I guess I should say. And I can confirm the Digitech pedal actually works properly. Does what it's supposed to. And that's pretty much, what I noticed. So at the end of the day, which one do I buy? Well, part of it's going to be whether or not, you want to, well, I guess big part's how much you're going to spend. And it seems like the KMise is consistently the cheaper one. Although on any given day, there might be a discount on the Lekato, and it might make it $5 or $10 cheaper. But day in, day out, it seems like the KMise has been the cheaper one. And they both have the software. I did like the layout of the website of KMise a little bit better than Lekato's. KMise had the manual, everything was right there. It seemed like it was a better layout. Not that at the end of the day, once you download the 2 files, or the one for Mac and then the one for PC, whatever you need for an editor, you're good to go. One other thing to notice when you install the software, there is a driver, a USB driver that it installs for Mac and or PC Windows. And when you install the software, the editor, it does that as well. So at the end of the day, price is pretty much going to decide here, with the cheaper 2 also being the newer 2. These Lekato and KMise are the 2023 versions of the Flamma FS21 and the Donner Circle Looper. Closing notes I'd like to put out there, because I know a lot of these companies like Donner, Flamma and all that, they're very good at updating their products when people give feedback. And the 2 things I'd like to see, we have an editor now that comes with this, but all this allows us to do is either take the loops we have and save them off to files, or take files and add them back to the looper. I was really hoping when they said there was an editor, I would be able to edit the drum loops. And they probably could update the firmware in some way, shape, or form to allow these to do it. But I suspect that the drum loops are hard-coded into the chip on these, so it's not that easy. However, they can modify the firmware and allow us to use, which is my second thing, allow us to use our own SD cards, right? So if they had a firmware update, we could still have the loops that are built in, that are hard-coded on the chip, but then we could have user editable, where we could copy over the hard-coded loop, copy it over to the SD. The firmware would obviously do this, not the user. And then have an editor, like a software editor, that would allow us to edit, add crash cymbals or take them away, or make our own drum pattern. And then all that could be stored on our own user SD. We could get a larger one, like a 64, 128, whatever. And then we have our own drum loops that we could make with software on a Mac or PC, save them to the pedal. And then when we scroll through the different ones, right, like here it says pop, right, we could have one that says user, and then maybe we get 10 or 20 user loops. And again, this would be a firmware update they would have to make to allow us to do this. And then we have our own loops that we can edit with a piece of software that doesn't exist quite yet. Interesting thing is, if they were to do that, the $300 Beat Buddy market would be, I guess, endangered, because these are obviously 1/3 the price of a Beat Buddy. And if we were able to edit and make our own drum loops and upload and download our own drum loops from the SD card that's on these, Beat Buddy would be in a precarious situation, because now they'd have competition that's 1/3 the price. And I don't know what else to say. There it is. That if they were to do that, or they could make a whole new 2024 model that incorporated that, allow us to use our own SD cards, right? It'd probably come with the 8 gig one, but we could swap that out, and then give us editor software to edit our own drum loops, and then import and export them as we see fit. That's about it. I'm going to be returning the Donner. I'm going to be returning the Flamma, and I'm going to be returning the Lekato. I'm keeping the KMise, just because they all do the same thing. I like the newer design with the SD card, even if I can't use it anything beyond what the stock functions are. Maybe a future update will allow that. Maybe it won't. But, you know, for the price, they're all basically the same. Why not keep the $69 one if it does what the $128 one does? And it's a newer build, newer model. It's 5 years newer. The KMise is 5 years newer than my Flamma. You know, even though I bought them all brand new from Amazon. And I don't want to get to the rambling part, but this is my review of the 4 pedals. There they are. Hopefully I covered some differences between them, because I was scratching my head saying, which one should I get? Wound up getting all 4. And I know there's a 5th one out there with some other brand name on it. Just to see what the differences were. And now I'm returning the ones I didn't use, thanks to Amazon for my credit on my Amazon card. So I didn't really actually have to pay for all these yet. Anyway, hopefully someone finds this useful. This was the information I wish I could have found without having to actually buy them and dig into them. And have a great day, and rock on with your drum loopers. All right, goodbye.